Young waitress offered her sandwich to a little girl. Didn't know her father was a millionaire and, in a small cafe tucked away on a quiet street, a young waitress named Emma was finishing her shift, wiping down the tables and straightening chairs. The hum of the city outside barely made it through the windows as she sighed, her tired eyes scanning the room. She had been working long hours to make ends meet. Her rent was due in a few days, and her bank account was practically empty. Despite her struggles, Emma always tried to stay positive, never letting her hardships show to the customers who came in for their morning coffee. She was used to this life, the routine of serving others, always putting herself last. But that morning, something was different. A little girl, no older than 6, walked into the cafe, holding a crumpled dollar bill in her tiny hand. She looked around, eyes wide, as if searching for something or someone. Emma noticed the girl standing by the counter, her eyes filled with hesitation. "Can I help you?" Emma asked, smiling gently. The little girl looked up, her face a mix of worry and confusion. "I'm hungry," she said softly. Emma's heart ached. The girl's clothes were old and worn, her hair tangled and messy, but her eyes, those innocent eyes, spoke volumes. "What can I get you?" Emma asked, her voice warm. The girl glanced at the menu, then back at Emma. "A sandwich, please," she whispered. Emma nodded and quickly prepared a simple sandwich, placing it on a plate with a glass of water. She didn't hesitate, even though it was the last of her own food. She could see the hunger in the girl's eyes, and for a moment, it felt like the right thing to do, despite her own financial struggles. "Here you go," Emma said, handing the plate to the girl. "Thank you," the little girl said, her voice barely above a whisper as she took the food. She sat at a small table, nibbling on the sandwich, her face lighting up with every bite. Emma couldn't help but watch her, a smile tugging at her lips. The simple act of kindness, the moment of connection, felt like the world was a little bit brighter. She didn't know why, but it felt like a moment worth cherishing. But little did Emma know, the girl she had just helped was no ordinary child. She was the daughter of one of the wealthiest men in the city, a man whose name was known in every high-rise office building. The man, who had been watching quietly from a corner table, was none other than Thomas Carter, the CEO of Carter Enterprises. He had seen Emma's kindness from a distance, and something about the way she treated his daughter, without hesitation or judgment, struck him deeply. As the girl finished her sandwich, Thomas stood up and approached Emma. She didn't recognize him, of course. He was just another man in a suit, sitting at the table in the back. But for Thomas, something about Emma's selflessness made her stand out. "Excuse me," he said, his voice smooth, though there was an intensity behind it. Emma looked up, slightly startled. "Yes," she replied, her eyes meeting his. "I wanted to thank you," he said. "That was very kind of you." Emma blinked, confused. "Thank you?" she asked, still unsure of who he was. He smiled, his expression unreadable. "I'm Thomas Carter," he said, "and that little girl you just helped is my daughter, Mia." Emma's heart skipped a beat as she realized who he was. She had heard the name before, of course. Everyone had. Carter Enterprises was a household name. She had no idea, though, that she had just helped the CEO's daughter. Emma started, but Thomas cut her off. "I'd like to talk to you," he said, his tone soft but insistent. "There's something I think you should hear." Confused but intrigued, Emma followed him to a quieter part of the cafe. As they sat down, Thomas smiled again, this time with more warmth in his eyes. "I've been watching you for a while, Emma," he began. "Your kindness to my daughter. It's rare to see that kind of selflessness these days." Emma was still in shock, but she couldn't hide the curiosity that was slowly replacing her confusion. "What do you mean?" she asked. Thomas leaned forward slightly, his voice lowering. "I'm not just here to thank you," he said. "I want to offer you something, a chance to change your life. You've proven to me that you have something special, something worth investing in. I want to offer you a job at my company, but more than that, I want to offer you a chance to grow, to make something of yourself. No strings attached, no catch, just an opportunity." Emma sat there, stunned. She never could have imagined that her simple act of kindness would lead to such an offer. She had no idea what to say, how to react. But she knew one thing. Her life was about to change forever. Emma sat there, still reeling from Thomas's sudden offer. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. A job at Carter Enterprises? The very thought seemed surreal. She had spent years in this small cafe, working long hours just to get by. And now here was this man, offering her a chance to completely change her life. She looked at Thomas, his confident posture and calm demeanor giving nothing away. His piercing blue eyes watched her intently, as if waiting for her to say something. But Emma had no words. She had no idea what to say. She had always been the type to work hard for what she had, never expecting anything in return. And yet here she was, being offered a life-altering opportunity just because of a simple act of kindness. Was she really deserving of it? Could she handle such a change? I don't know what to say. Emma finally managed to stammer, her voice a mix of disbelief and hesitation. This is just so unexpected. Thomas gave her a reassuring smile, leaning back slightly in his chair. You don't need to say anything right now, he said. Take your time. I'm not asking you to make a decision on the spot. I just wanted to make sure you knew that the opportunity is there. Emma nodded slowly, still processing what he had just said. But why me? She asked, her brow furrowing in confusion. Why offer me a job? There must be other people more qualified. Thomas chuckled softly, his eyes glinting with something unreadable. It's not about qualifications, Emma. It's about character. What I saw in you today, how you helped Mia without hesitation, without asking for anything in return, that's rare. In this world, people often look for something in exchange. But you didn't. That's what stood out to me. Emma blinked, trying to wrap her head around his words. Was he really saying that her kindness was the reason she was getting this opportunity? It didn't make sense to her. But there was something in his gaze, something genuine, that made her want to believe him. I just did what anyone would do, she said quietly, feeling a bit embarrassed. She looked hungry, and I had enough to share. Thomas nodded thoughtfully. That's exactly it, he said. You did what anyone could have done, but most people don't. And that's why I believe you have something special. I've seen too many people who are only in it for themselves. But you, Emma, you're different. Emma's heart fluttered at his words. She had always thought of herself as ordinary, just another struggling waitress trying to make ends meet. But here was a man who saw something in her, something she had never seen in herself. I don't know if I'm ready for this, she admitted, the weight of the decision starting to settle in. I've been working in this cafe for so long. It's all I know. Thomas leaned forward, his tone gentle but firm. I understand, he said, and I'm not asking you to jump into anything without thinking it through. I'm offering you a chance to grow, to step outside your comfort zone. You have the potential to do so much more than what you're doing now. But the choice is yours. Emma felt a strange mix of excitement and fear swirling inside her. This was the kind of opportunity that people only dreamed of. But was she ready to take that leap? Was she ready to leave everything she knew behind and step into a world she had only ever heard about in stories? She thought about her family, her friends, and the life she had built here in this small cafe. It wasn't much, but it was hers. Could she give that up for something unknown? She didn't know. I'll think about it, Emma said finally, her voice steady but uncertain. Thomas smiled again, standing up. Take all the time you need, he said. But remember, opportunities like this don't come around often. When you're ready, give me a call. I'll be waiting. As he turned to leave, Emma watched him walk away, her mind racing with thoughts of the future. She had no idea what was waiting for her, but for the first time in a long time, she felt like something big was about to happen. She didn't know if she was ready for it, but she knew one thing for sure. Her life was about to change in ways she couldn't even imagine. That night, Emma lay awake in her small apartment, staring at the ceiling. She thought about everything that had happened that day. The simple act of kindness she had shown Mia, the unexpected offer from Thomas Carter. It all felt like a dream. Could she really leave this life behind and step into something new? She didn't know. But as she drifted off to sleep, one thing kept running through her mind. Maybe this was the chance she had been waiting for. Maybe this was her moment to change her life, to stop being just another waitress in a small cafe, and become something more. The next few days felt like a blur for Emma. She couldn't stop thinking about the offer Thomas had made. She found herself torn between excitement and doubt, her mind constantly racing with questions. Could she really leave everything behind and step into a new world? Was she ready to face the challenges that came with such a big opportunity? Emma tried to focus on her work at the cafe, but it was hard to concentrate. Her customers noticed the distraction in her eyes, the way she seemed to be somewhere else, lost in thought. It was a Saturday morning when she finally decided to make the call. The cafe was quieter than usual, a lull between the breakfast and lunch rush. Emma grabbed her phone from behind the counter, her fingers trembling slightly as she dialed Thomas's number. She had been putting it off, but now, there was no more time to waste. The phone rang for a few moments before he picked up. "Emma," Thomas's voice greeted her warmly. "I was wondering when I'd hear from you." Her heart raced, but she steadied herself, taking a deep breath. "Hi, Thomas," she said, her voice a bit shakier than she wanted it to be. "I've been thinking a lot about your offer. And, well, I think I'm ready to give it a try." There was a brief silence on the other end of the line, and Emma could almost hear Thomas smiling. "I'm glad to hear that," he said, his tone soft but confident. "You won't regret it, I promise." Emma felt a surge of relief mixed with excitement. She had made her decision. "I'm ready," she repeated, this time with more conviction. Thomas chuckled, and Emma could almost picture him nodding in approval. "Great. I'll have my assistant set up a meeting for you at the office. I want you to meet some of the people you'll be working with. We'll go over the details then." "Thank you, Thomas," Emma said, the words coming out in a rush. "I won't let you down." "I know you won't," he replied, and with that, they ended the call. Emma stood still for a moment, her heart pounding. This was really happening. She was about to step into a completely different world, one that she had never imagined for herself. She felt a mix of nerves and excitement, but deep down, she knew it was the right choice. Later that week, Emma walked into the grand lobby of Carter Enterprises, her heart beating faster with every step. The marble floors gleamed under the soft lighting, and the walls were lined with sleek, modern artwork. She couldn't believe she was actually here, about to meet the people who worked in this towering building. She had grown up in a small town, worked in small cafes, and never imagined she would be stepping into a world of million-dollar deals and high-rise offices. Her nerves were almost overwhelming, but she pushed them aside. She was here now, and she had to make the most of this chance. As she walked into the elevator, she couldn't help but feel like she didn't belong. The people around her were impeccably dressed, their expressions serious as they typed away on their phones or discussed business over coffee. Emma, in her simple blouse and skirt, felt like she stuck out in a sea of luxury. But she reminded herself why she was here. She had earned this. When the elevator doors opened on the top floor, Emma stepped out into a world she had only ever seen in movies. The office was expansive, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a breathtaking view of the city below. The sleek desks and modern decor made it look more like a place for high-powered executives than a place for someone like her. She was greeted by a woman with a warm smile, who introduced herself as Claire, Thomas's assistant. "It's so nice to finally meet you, Emma," Claire said, shaking her hand. "Thomas has been looking forward to your visit." Emma smiled nervously, trying to steady her racing thoughts. "I'm excited to be here," she said, though she couldn't help but feel a little out of place. Claire led Emma down a long corridor to an office at the end. As they approached, Emma's nerves kicked into overdrive. This was it. This was the moment she had been waiting for. When they entered, Thomas was standing by the window, looking out at the city. He turned when he heard the door open and smiled as he saw Emma. "I'm glad you could make it," he said, his voice warm. "Please, have a seat." Emma took a deep breath before sitting down, trying to look calm and composed, even though her mind was racing. Thomas sat across from her, his gaze steady and reassuring. "So, Emma," he began, "this is the first step of your new journey. I know it's a lot to take in, but I believe in you. You're here because I see something in you that is rare." Emma swallowed hard, her heart pounding in her chest. "Thank you, Thomas," she said softly. "I'm ready for whatever comes next." And with that, the next chapter of Emma's life began. Little did she know, her decision to help a little girl with a sandwich would lead to a future she could never have imagined. She was no longer just a waitress in a small cafe. She was about to become a part of something much bigger. A new journey had begun, and Emma was ready to face whatever challenges came her way. The days that followed Emma's first meeting at Carter Enterprises were a whirlwind of new experiences. The office was unlike anything she had ever imagined. The modern decor, the quiet hustle of professionals at their desks, the high-tech systems that controlled everything from the temperature to the lighting, all of it felt like a different world. But despite the luxury and the polished exterior, Emma felt a sense of purpose that kept her grounded. She had made the right choice by accepting Thomas's offer. Each day, she learned something new, from attending meetings with people whose names she had only ever read in the business section of the newspaper, to adjusting to the fast-paced rhythm of the corporate world. She spent hours in training, learning about the company, its history, and its values. But beyond the technical knowledge, she learned about herself. She was becoming more confident, more capable, and slowly, she began to feel like she belonged. It was on the third week that Thomas asked her to join him for a business dinner. "I want you to meet some important partners," he had said, his tone serious but encouraging. Emma was nervous, of course. She had never been to a dinner like this, where high-powered executives gathered to discuss deals that could change the future of the company. But she knew this was an opportunity for her to prove herself, to show that she was more than just a waitress from a small café. She arrived at the restaurant early, her hands trembling as she adjusted the dress she had borrowed from Claire, Thomas's assistant. It was the first time she had worn something so elegant, and she felt out of place, but Claire had reassured her that she looked great. "You're one of us now, Emma," Claire had said with a smile. When Thomas arrived, he greeted her with a warm smile, his presence commanding the attention of everyone around him. As they made their way to the table, Emma couldn't help but notice the way people's eyes followed them. She felt out of place in the sea of tailored suits and expensive dresses, but Thomas seemed completely at ease. He pulled out her chair and sat beside her, making sure she was comfortable. Throughout the evening, she found herself in conversations with people she never would have imagined speaking to, let alone sharing a table with. There were moments when she felt completely lost, like when they discussed financial projections or marketing strategies. But then Thomas would look at her with that encouraging smile, as if telling her that she was capable of understanding it all. Slowly, Emma began to pick up on the nuances of the conversations, listening closely, learning the language of the business world. She was starting to feel like she belonged, even if just a little. It was toward the end of the dinner that something unexpected happened. One of the guests, a middle-aged man who had been talking with Thomas for most of the night, turned to Emma and asked, "So, Emma, what do you think of Carter Enterprises? I'm sure you've got some fresh perspectives." Emma's heart skipped a beat. She wasn't sure what to say. She had only been with the company for a few weeks, and most of what she had learned was still fresh and raw. But then she remembered something Thomas had told her when she first started. "Don't be afraid to speak your mind. You've got good instincts." Taking a deep breath, she turned to the man and said, "Well, from what I've seen so far, I think Carter Enterprises is driven by more than just profits. It's about making a real difference, about connecting with people and building a legacy that's not just financial, but meaningful." She paused, unsure if her answer was too bold. But then she saw Thomas's approving smile from across the table, and it gave her the confidence to continue. "I think the company's focus on innovation and community outreach is what sets it apart from others," she added, her voice steady now. The table fell silent for a moment, and Emma wondered if she had said something wrong. But then the man smiled and nodded. "I agree," he said. "It's nice to see someone who gets it." Emma felt a wave of relief wash over her. She had spoken her truth, and it had been well received. The conversation moved on, but Emma's mind was racing. She had done it. She had stepped up, and her words had made an impact. That night, as she walked back to her apartment, Emma felt a sense of pride she had never experienced before. She was no longer the shy, uncertain girl who had worked in a cafe. She was becoming someone else, someone capable of making a real difference. And for the first time in a long time, Emma believed in her own potential. Little did she know, the dinner was just the beginning. As the weeks went by, Emma's confidence continued to grow, and with it, her place within Carter Enterprises. She was becoming an integral part of the team, contributing ideas, taking on responsibilities, and earning the respect of her colleagues. But even with all the success, there was still a part of her that couldn't forget where she came from. She had come a long way from that small cafe, but Emma knew one thing for sure. No matter how far she went, she would always remember the kindness that had set her on this path, the simple act of offering a sandwich to a little girl that had changed everything. As the weeks passed, Emma found herself settling into her new role at Carter Enterprises. The initial shock of her new life had worn off, and now, it was all about proving herself. Every day, she worked tirelessly, attending meetings, preparing reports, and contributing ideas. She was still learning, But she was no longer the same girl who had walked into the office for the first time. Now, she felt like she truly belonged. She had earned the respect of her colleagues, and even Thomas, who had been her mentor from the start, often praised her for her dedication and insight. But despite her growing success, Emma couldn't help but feel the weight of her past. She had come so far, and yet sometimes she still felt like the girl who worked in the café, unsure of her worth. It was during one of these moments of doubt that she received a call from her mother. "Emma, I need to talk to you." Her mother's voice crackled through the phone, filled with concern. "What's wrong, Mom?" Emma asked, her heart skipping a beat. "It's your father," her mother said. "He's been sick for a while now, and the doctors say it's serious." Emma felt her stomach drop. Her father had always been a strong man, the kind of person who never showed weakness. But hearing her mother's words made her realize how fragile life could be. She knew she needed to go home, to be with her family, but she was also afraid. Afraid of what it would mean for her career, afraid of what it would mean for the life she had worked so hard to build. "I'll come home right away," Emma said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Don't worry, Mom. I'll be there." After hanging up, Emma sat in silence for a moment, trying to collect herself. She had been so focused on her work, on the new life she had started at Carter Enterprises, that she had forgotten about the people who had always been there for her, her family. She knew she couldn't put off going home any longer. But there was a part of her that was scared of facing her past, scared of seeing her father in this condition. She didn't know if she was ready to confront the life she had left behind. That evening, Emma boarded a flight back to her hometown. The plane ride felt longer than usual, the silence in the cabin amplifying the thoughts swirling in her head. She thought about her father, about the sacrifices he had made for her and her family. She thought about her mother, always the strong one, now having to shoulder the burden alone. And she thought about herself, about the girl who had always dreamed of something more, of a life beyond the small town she had grown up in. She had made it. She had worked hard and built something for herself. But now, it felt like everything she had worked for was slipping away. When Emma arrived home, the familiar sights of her small town felt strange. It had been months since she had last visited, and the town hadn't changed much. The streets were still lined with the same old houses, the same shops, the same people. But Emma was different. She wasn't the same girl who had left for the big city, full of dreams and uncertainties. She had become someone else, someone who had found a new sense of purpose and confidence. As she made her way to her childhood home, she noticed the changes in her family as well. Her father was lying in bed, his once strong body now frail and weak. His face was pale, his eyes dull, and Emma's heart broke at the sight. He had always been her rock, the one who had always pushed her to do better, to strive for more. Seeing him like this, so vulnerable, made her feel small. "Dad?" she whispered, kneeling beside his bed. He opened his eyes slowly, a faint smile appearing on his lips when he saw her. "Emma," he said softly. "You're here." "I'm here, Dad," Emma said, her voice breaking. She took his hand in hers, holding on tightly. "I'm so sorry I've been away. I should have been here sooner." "You've done well for yourself, Emma," her father said weakly, his voice filled with pride. "I'm proud of you. Don't ever forget that." Tears welled up in Emma's eyes as she squeezed his hand. "I won't, Dad. I promise." Over the next few days, Emma stayed by her father's side, helping her mother with his care and spending time with her family. It was hard, seeing the man who had always been so strong and full of life now so frail and helpless. But it was also a reminder of the importance of family, of the people who had always been there for her, even when she had been focused on building her own life. As she sat with her father one evening, talking about old memories and laughing through their tears, Emma realized something important. No matter how far she went in life, no matter how much she achieved, it was her family that mattered most. They were the ones who had shaped her, who had made her who she was today. And no amount of success or wealth could replace that. As Emma returned to Carter Enterprises a few days later, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. Her time at home had reminded her of the things that truly mattered, and she was determined to balance her success with her family. She knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but she was ready to face it, with the support of her family and the lessons she had learned along the way. As she walked into the office, Thomas smiled at her. "How's everything?" he asked, noticing the change in her demeanor. "Better," Emma said, smiling back. "I'm ready for whatever comes next." And with that, Emma's journey continued, not just as a successful professional, but as a daughter, a sister, and someone who had found a new understanding of what truly mattered in life. Emma's return to Carter Enterprises was marked by a renewed sense of determination. She had spent the last few days focusing on her family, realizing how precious they were and how much they had shaped the person she had become. But now, she was back in the office, ready to take on the challenges ahead. The morning air was crisp as she walked into the building, her heels clicking against the polished floors. The usual hum of the office was comforting, but today, there was a new energy in the air. Emma felt more confident than ever before, as if everything she had experienced, the highs and lows, had prepared her for this moment. She greeted her colleagues, who smiled at her with warm recognition. They could all see the change in her. Emma had grown. She wasn't just the new girl who had arrived out of nowhere. She was now an integral part of the team. As she settled into her desk, Thomas approached her with a smile. "How are you doing?" he asked, his tone casual, but there was a knowing look in his eyes. Emma nodded, her expression steady. "I'm doing well, Thomas," she said. "Better than before. I'm ready for what comes next." Thomas seemed pleased with her answer. He had always believed in her, and now it was clear that she was more than capable of handling the responsibility that came with her new role. Over the next few weeks, Emma continued to prove herself. She took on more projects, contributed valuable insights, and built stronger relationships with her colleagues. Thomas often praised her for her growth, and slowly, Emma began to feel like she was more than just a part of the team. She was becoming a leader in her own right. But despite her progress, there was still one lingering question on her mind. What would her future hold? She had come so far, from the quiet waitress in a small café to becoming a key player at one of the most successful companies in the city. Yet, she couldn't help but wonder if there was something more she was meant to do. One evening, as Emma was leaving the office after a long day, Thomas stopped her. "Emma, I'd like to talk to you about something," he said, his voice serious. Emma felt her heart skip a beat. Had she done something wrong? She followed Thomas into his office, her mind racing. When the door closed behind them, Thomas turned to face her. "I've been thinking," he began. "You've done an outstanding job here at Carter Enterprises, and I think it's time for you to take the next step." Emma frowned, unsure of what he meant. "What do you mean?" she asked. Thomas smiled, his eyes filled with admiration. "I think you're ready for a bigger challenge," he said. "I want to offer you a promotion. You'll be heading up one of our major departments. It's a big responsibility, but I know you're capable of handling it." Emma's breath caught in her throat. A promotion? She had worked so hard to get to this point, but the thought of leading an entire department felt overwhelming. I don't know," she said, her voice tentative. "It's a huge step." Thomas looked at her with understanding. "I know it's a big change, but you've already proven that you have what it takes. This is your chance to make a real impact, to take your career to the next level. You don't have to decide right now, but I think you're ready." Emma sat in silence, her mind spinning. Could she really handle such a big responsibility? She had always been afraid of stepping out of her comfort zone, of taking on more than she could handle. But then she remembered everything she had already overcome, the struggles with her family, the leap into this new life at Carter Enterprises, the growth she had experienced. Maybe, just maybe, this was the next step in her journey. "I'll do it," Emma said finally, her voice steady with determination. "I'm ready for the challenge." Thomas smiled, a look of pride in his eyes. "I knew you would be," he said. "I'm looking forward to seeing what you'll accomplish." As Emma left Thomas's office, her heart was racing with excitement and nerves. She had taken a leap of faith, and now, she was about to face the biggest challenge of her career. But for the first time in a long time, Emma didn't feel scared. She felt ready. She knew she had the skills, the determination, and the heart to succeed. And this new opportunity was exactly what she needed to continue growing, to continue pushing herself further than she ever thought possible. The next day, Emma stood in front of her new team, her heart pounding in her chest. She had never led a department before, but she was determined to do her best. As she spoke to the group, outlining her vision and goals for the department, she felt a sense of purpose that she had never felt before. This was her time. She was no longer the girl who had worked in a café, unsure of her place in the world. She was now a leader, someone who could make a real difference. And as she looked out at her team, she knew that this was only the beginning of something even bigger. Emma's journey was far from over. But she had come a long way, and now she was ready to take on the world. As the weeks went by, Emma settled into her new role with an unexpected ease. Leading a department at Carter Enterprises was no small feat, but with the guidance and trust Thomas had placed in her, she found herself rising to the occasion. She worked late nights, managing teams, overseeing projects, and making key decisions that would shape the future of the company. Yet, despite her busy schedule and growing success, Emma never forgot where she came from. She still remembered the small cafe, the long shifts, and the simple, honest life she had left behind. In a way, it kept her grounded, reminding her that no matter how far she went, her roots would always be with her. One morning, after a particularly grueling week of meetings, Emma found herself at a crossroads. She had made an incredible impact in her new role, but something felt missing. The excitement of the promotion, the thrill of the challenge, all of it seemed to fade into the background as she realized that she had lost touch with the very thing that had gotten her to where she was, her passion for helping others. The reason she had helped that little girl in the cafe all those months ago wasn't just because she had a kind heart. It was because she wanted to make a difference. She wanted to feel like her actions mattered, like she was truly contributing to the world around her. But in the midst of all the corporate strategy and high-stakes decisions, she had lost sight of that. One evening, as she sat at her desk, staring at a mountain of paperwork, she received a message from her mother. "Emma, I'm so proud of you. You've come so far. Your dad would have been proud too." Emma stared at the screen for a moment, the words hitting her harder than she expected. Her father's passing had been difficult for her to accept, and even though she had been strong for her family, a part of her still felt the emptiness that his absence left. But her mother's message made her realize something important. Her father would have wanted her to continue making a difference, to not just build a successful career, but to live a life that meant something. With that thought in mind, Emma stood up from her desk, walked over to the window, and looked out at the city. The lights of the skyscrapers flickered like stars, and for a brief moment, she felt a sense of peace. She wasn't just here for the paycheck or the prestige. She was here to create something that would last, to make an impact on the lives of others, just like she had with that little girl. It was then that Emma knew what she had to do. She called Thomas the next morning and asked for a meeting. She had made her decision. When they sat down in his office, Emma took a deep breath and looked at Thomas. "Thomas, I've been thinking," she began. "I've been focused so much on growing my career that I've lost sight of why I started this journey in the first place. I want to do more, not just for the company, but for the people who need it the most. I want to start a foundation, a project that focuses on giving back to the community, supporting those who are struggling the way I once did. I want to make a real impact." Thomas looked at her with a mixture of surprise and admiration. "That's a bold move, Emma," he said, his tone thoughtful. "But I believe you can do it. You've got the passion, the drive, and the vision. I'll support you in any way I can." Emma smiled, feeling a weight lift off her shoulders. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she was on the right path. This was what she was meant to do. As she worked to establish the foundation, Emma poured all of her energy into the project. She organized fundraising events, partnered with local businesses, and sought out individuals who shared her vision. Slowly but surely, the foundation began to take shape. Emma's determination and passion were contagious, and soon, people from all walks of life were getting involved. As the foundation grew, Emma realized that this was the missing piece she had been searching for. She wasn't just a leader in the corporate world. She was a leader in her community, making a difference in ways she had never imagined. It was during one of the foundation's first events, a charity gala, that Emma saw how far she had come. Surrounded by people who had supported her, people who believed in her vision, she felt a sense of fulfillment she had never known before. The lights of the gala sparkled, and Emma stood at the center of it all, a smile on her face, knowing that this was just the beginning. She had found her true calling, helping others. And as she looked around the room, she knew that everything she had done, every decision she had made, had led her to this moment. The girl who once worked in a cafe, unsure of her future, had now built a foundation that was changing lives. Emma had not only found success, she had found meaning in her work. And with that, she realized something else, that her journey wasn't about the destination. It was about the people she touched along the way, the lives she had changed, and the difference she had made in the world. Emma had found her purpose, and she was ready to continue her journey, one step at a time. Months passed, and Emma's foundation continued to grow, gaining momentum with every event and every partnership. She had successfully integrated her work at Carter Enterprises with her newfound purpose, finding a balance that allowed her to thrive in both worlds. Her team at the foundation was expanding, and they were making real progress in helping those in need. Emma couldn't be prouder of what they had achieved, but as time went on, she began to feel the weight of her responsibilities more deeply. It wasn't just about business deals and charity events anymore. It was about lives, real people who relied on the foundation's support. One evening, after a long day at the office, Emma sat in her apartment, the city lights glowing outside her window. The constant buzz of activity in the office had given her little time to reflect, but tonight, she needed to think. She had built this life for herself, from working in a small café to leading a department at Carter Enterprises, to now running a foundation that was truly changing lives. But something still felt off. Was she doing enough? Was there more she could do? As she sat in silence, her phone buzzed, breaking her thoughts. It was a message from Thomas. "I've been thinking about you, Emma. We need to talk about the future of Carter Enterprises, and I want you to be a part of it." Emma's heart skipped a beat. She had known that Thomas saw her potential, but this felt different. She had already made a significant impact at the company, but was there more he had in mind for her? She quickly typed a reply, agreeing to meet the next day. The meeting took place in Thomas's office, and as she sat across from him, Emma couldn't help but feel a wave of uncertainty. Thomas, as usual, was calm and composed, his sharp eyes studying her with that ever-present look of admiration. "Emma," he began, his voice steady, "you've done exceptional work here at Carter Enterprises, but I think it's time for you to step into an even bigger role. I'm offering you a seat on the executive board." Emma blinked, taken aback by the sudden offer. The executive board was a powerful group of individuals, and being part of it would mean she would have a direct influence on the company's future. It was everything she had worked for, yet the idea of it felt overwhelming. "Thomas," she said softly, trying to steady her racing thoughts. "I've spent so much time focused on growing the company, but I've also been running a foundation that means the world to me. I don't know if I can balance both." Thomas smiled, understanding her hesitation. "I know this is a big decision," he said, "but I believe you can handle it. You've already proven that you have what it takes to lead and make a difference. This is an opportunity for you to take what you've learned here and extend it to a much larger scale. Think about it, Emma. You can be the bridge between the company and the communities we aim to help. You'll have the power to make a real impact, not just for the company, but for the world." Emma felt her heart swell with emotion. Thomas was right. She had always believed in making a difference, and now, she had the chance to do so on a global scale. It wasn't just about the company anymore. It was about creating a legacy, about using her position to help others. The decision was clear. "I'll do it," Emma said, her voice filled with determination. "I'll accept the position on the board, and I'll continue to run the foundation. I know I can do both." Thomas's smile widened, and for the first time, Emma saw a look of pride in his eyes. "I knew you'd make the right choice," he said. As she walked out of Thomas's office, Emma felt a new sense of purpose. This was the next chapter of her journey, and she was ready for it. The future was unfolding before her, and for the first time, she didn't feel afraid. She felt empowered. The next few months were a blur of meetings, strategy sessions, and public appearances. Emma worked tirelessly, balancing her role on the executive board with her work at the foundation. She was no longer just a leader at Carter Enterprises or the head of a charity. She was someone who could make a difference in both worlds. Her voice was heard in the boardroom, and her influence reached far beyond the walls of the office. With every decision, she ensured that the company's success was intertwined with its commitment to helping others. And as Emma continued to rise in both the business world and the world of philanthropy, she realized that her journey was about more than just professional achievement. It was about purpose, about living a life that meant something beyond the titles and accolades. It was about using her success to lift others up, to create lasting change. As she stood at the podium during one of the foundation's major fundraising events, looking out at the sea of faces, Emma couldn't help but feel a deep sense of fulfillment. She had come so far from the girl who had worked in a small cafe, unsure of her future. Now, she was a leader, a visionary, and someone who had found her true calling. The applause filled the room, but all Emma could think about was how far she had come, and how much more there was still to do. She had found her place in the world, and she was ready to continue her journey, making a difference one step at a time. As Emma stood at the podium, looking out over the crowd at the charity gala, she felt a sense of pride and fulfillment that was beyond anything she had ever experienced. The room was filled with people who shared her vision, who believed in the work she was doing, and who were there to support her efforts in making a difference. Her foundation had raised millions that night, funds that would go toward helping countless people in need, and it was a moment that felt like the culmination of everything she had worked for. But even as she basked in the success of the event, Emma knew that this was only the beginning. The journey she had started all those months ago, when she had been a waitress, unsure of her place in the world, had led her to this point. But the work was far from over. There were still so many lives to change, so many communities to help, and so many dreams to fulfill. Emma had come a long way from the small café where she had once worked, and now she was a force for good in the world, using her success to make a lasting impact. She had found her purpose, and it was bigger than any title, any position, or any amount of wealth. It was about creating real, meaningful change. As she stepped down from the stage, her heart swelled with gratitude. She had the love and support of her family, the trust of Thomas and the team at Carter Enterprises, and the respect of everyone who had watched her grow into the leader she had become. But what mattered most to Emma was knowing that she was living her truth, that every decision she made, every challenge she faced, was part of a larger story of compassion, purpose, and service. And she was ready for whatever came next. That night, as Emma walked through the bustling streets of the city, her mind was full of possibilities. The city lights flickered above her, reminding her of how far she had come and how much more there was to do. She wasn't sure where this path would lead, but she knew one thing for certain. She was ready to keep walking it, one step at a time. She had learned that success wasn't just about climbing the corporate ladder or achieving personal goals. It was about the people you helped along the way, the lives you touched, and the legacy you created. Emma had built something meaningful, something that would last, and she knew that her journey wasn't just about her. It was about everyone who would benefit from the work she had started. The next morning, Emma stood in her office, looking out at the skyline of the city. She could still feel the excitement of the gala the night before, but now, she was thinking ahead. There were still so many opportunities to make a difference, so much more to accomplish, and she was ready for it. She thought about the little girl she had helped all those months ago, about how that simple act of kindness had set everything in motion. She had never imagined that it would lead her here, to a life of purpose, to a career where she could not only be successful, but also make a real impact. Emma smiled to herself as she picked up the phone and dialed Thomas's number. "Hey, Thomas," she said when he picked up. "I've been thinking a lot about the future, and I think it's time we expand the foundation. It's grown so much, and we need to reach even more people. I want to start a new initiative, one that focuses on providing education and opportunities for young people in underserved communities. I know it will take a lot of work, but I'm ready to take it on." Thomas's voice came through the phone, filled with enthusiasm. "Emma, that's exactly the kind of vision we need. You've come so far, and I know this new project will be just as successful as everything else you've done. Let's make it happen." As Emma hung up the phone, she felt a renewed sense of excitement. She had come so far, but she wasn't done yet. There was still so much to do. As she turned back to her desk, she saw her reflection in the window. The woman staring back at her was someone she hardly recognized. She wasn't the shy, unsure girl who had once struggled to find her place in the world. She was a leader, a visionary, someone who had built something lasting. And she was just getting started. Emma knew that her journey would never truly be complete. It would be a journey of constant growth, of helping others, and of making the world a better place, one step at a time. And as she looked out at the city that had become her home, she couldn't help but feel grateful for everything she had learned, for every person she had met along the way, and for the endless possibilities that lay ahead. This was her life now, one of purpose, of compassion, and of change, and she was ready to embrace it all.